Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for September 30th, 2024. Well, events of the last week around the UN General Assembly demonstrated absolutely conclusively that we're in the midst of a battle between two paradigms, and only one of them will emerge. One paradigm is already here, the imperial paradigm run by the international global oligarchy. And what's emerging in opposition to it is one based on the commitment to a new security and development order based on mutual benefit and cooperation. Now, we're going to have a series of events this week that are going to be addressing this in the most profound way. First, on October 2nd, will be a conference on Germany Needs a New Strategic Architecture, and will feature former U.S. Ambassador to Russia Jack Matlock, nuclear expert Ted Postal, and others to talk about the threat from NATO and the deployment of missiles into Germany, but more significantly, how Germany can play a leading role in breaking the power of the unipolar order. There'll be a link to that in the description section below. Then on October 3rd, Helga Zepp-LaRouche will be a participant in a BRICS Summit conference from Lima, Peru, which is sponsored by the embassies of all the major BRICS countries. And they'll be talking about how to move peacefully to transition into a new development architecture. Then on October 4th, we'll have the weekly International Peace Coalition Conference, and that's something that has become increasingly important for alternative voices to speak out. Now, on this clash of two paradigms, we saw the oligarchy trying to preserve their system at all costs. They're facing determined opposition from sovereign nations around the world, which are unwilling to submit to the predatory demands of the imperial powers. That these are imperial powers defending what? An empire of debt. And it can only be sustained by looting and war, a financialization system which includes the weaponization of the dollar, as well as irregular warfare such as coups, assassinations, censorship, and real kinetic warfare, as we're seeing both in Ukraine and in Southwest Asia. They're willing to risk everything to preserve their empire. And an example of that was Blinken's response when President Biden rejected the demand that Ukraine be given the right to start shooting missiles into Russian territory. Blinken came back and said that the right to deep strike into Russia was still a live option. He said, quote, "We're looking at this very carefully. We've said this many times, and I'll say it again. Every step along the way, we've adjusted and adapted to Ukraine's military needs, and I'm confident that we'll continue to do so." The next opportunity for this is the October 12th Ramstein Ukraine Contact Group meeting, which will be attended by Biden. And between now and then, there'll be a concerted effort to convince Biden that he has to release Ukraine from the demand that they not shoot missiles into Russia, and that Ukraine be given the right to use US and British missiles to strike deep within Russian territory. And at the same time, we saw what Netanyahu's up to with his insistence at the United Nations that he is not bound by international law. He insulted the UN, calling it an anti-Semitic swamp. He said, "We reserve the right to strike anywhere where we have enemies." Maybe he's talking about hitting the UN as well. Because what came out is that there is an effort within the global majority to shift away from this confrontation, which is leading to war. Now, one other aspect of this, let me just give you a quick report on this, and maybe we'll have more in the next day or so. There was a new report from the Atlanta Federal Reserve on how the bloated debt driven by speculation needs bailout. And what it basically says is that the dollar has become an instrument of speculators and has nothing behind it except these speculative values which can never be fungible. As a result, they're going to defend the financialization failures with selective bailouts that will prop up the speculative paper values backed by nothing except military expenditures and deindustrialization. Now, the rebellion against this is deepening because the developing sector countries have been submitted to these conditionalities by the International Monetary Fund and the bankers for decades. But it actually goes back hundreds of years to these European imperial imposition on nations of the global South. And the rebellion was seen at the United Nations General Assembly. At the very opening of the assembly, there was a resolution from a Palestinian representative demanding an end to Israel's occupation, immediate end. And this was a continued drumbeat throughout the week, and it's going to continue this week. Secondly, there was the creation of a global Friends of Peace centered around Brazil and China, and their insistence that there be a diplomatic resolution to the Ukraine war, which is different from Zelensky's demand for victory through weapons and killing. More than 20 nations are signed up as part of this. And what they're basically saying, they're not going to sacrifice their futures to bail out this collapsing empire. And this is going to be leading to the October 22nd to 24th BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia. Now, all of this is occurring as we see the lamest of lame ducks, Joe Biden, talking about how he's going to continue to work hard for a ceasefire. Now it's a ceasefire in Lebanon. The same language and the same tactic of Israel, of scorched earth, of 2,000-pound bombs being used, of cutting off supplies, of hitting civilians. This is what Netanyahu promised will continue until Hezbollah is defeated, Hamas is defeated, and Iran is defeated. Now, what is the policy of Harris? She's a premature lame duck. She's supporting the same policy as Biden. She has no alternative, and this is a fraud being perpetrated that she somehow represents something different. Now, part of what we're going to be doing is we're going to be producing a dossier on Antony Blinken, because he's a walking interface of the military-industrial financial complex, the deep state, the corporate cartels, the Mossad, you name it. If there's an evil operation in the world, Blinken is a part of it. Some of it goes back to his family background, where his family has been servants of the global oligarchy for a number of years. But he's one of the people who pushed the line that the Russian special military operation was an unprovoked assault, demanding massive funding of Ukrainian war efforts, which is now over $200 billion officially. Who knows how much it really is. And he's also been exposed for his role in covering up Israeli genocide in Gaza, and I assume he'll do the same thing to protect their operations in Lebanon. So we'll have more on this in the next couple of days, because this is a key aspect of the attempt to sustain a unipolar order, which is collapsing as a result of the tremendous weight of the debt and the unwillingness of countries to sacrifice so the speculators can have their debt kept alive on their books by looting. So we'll have more on that. Look to the links that are in the description box for material on this, as well as the invitation to the event on Wednesday. My final word on this is get off your ass and join us. It's your future that's at stake.